Hey sunshine! I'm Katie and welcome back to Dark Sunlight. This week it's time to set up our bullet journals for March. But first, let's take a quick look at how February is going so far. First is this quote and cover page I created with a marker watercolor technique. Next is the calendar and social trackers. Then we have my half-filled out habit, mood, and health trackers. Then the faves and memories page, which I completely forgot to fix the title on. My first weekly. And my second weekly. And I've left 2 blank pages for the final 2 weeks of the month. And now we can set up March. I didn't do any pre-sketching this time, so you're going to see the whole process from blank pages to finished product. I know some of you enjoy seeing that whole process. Sometimes I think it takes a bit too long when I'm trying to film at the same time, but for this I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted in my head already, so I didn't think it would take too long to sketch out the layouts. When I'm setting up a quote page like this, I mark my center lines horizontally and vertically, and then I draw the letters and words from the center outward to make sure that the finished product will be centered on the page. And as you can see, I also tend to messily write the letters first just to test the size and spacing, and then I use my kneaded eraser to lighten up those lines and go back over to draw what I actually want the font to look like. Next, I figured out the layout for my habit, mood, and health tracker. It will be essentially the same as last month, but made into a vertical layout just to switch things up. I also removed tracking vegan as a habit because I'm basically fully plant-based now and I don't really need to track it anymore. After that, I sketched out the title placement for my faves and memories spread. Then I set up the layout for my first weekly spread. Now we can flip back and start inking and coloring everything. You may notice my calendar page is very different than my normal setup. I was getting bored with it and decided to switch back to the slightly more traditional bullet journal monthly spread style of a vertical layout. I also removed my social trackers because I have a page in the front of my bullet journal to track those metrics, so I didn't really feel the need to keep tracking them in every monthly spread as well. The quote I chose for March is about imagination, because Pisces can be rather imaginative and dreamy people. This quote, "Logic will take you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere," was said by Albert Einstein, who also had his sun sign in Pisces. The symbol at the bottom of the page is a combination of the glyph for Pisces and the symbol for the element of water. enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications every time I post a new video. It really helps the channel to grow. I made all the text in the quote by layering my 2 blue Tombow markers together. Framing the top and bottom of the page, I drew in some very squiggly lines and combined 2 of my blue Tombow markers to make it look like the ocean surf rolling in. Same as with the text, I just layered the markers on top of each other until they blended a bit. I then outlined the edge in a pale pinkish beige to look a bit like sand. Then I used that same pink marker to delineate the weekends on the vertical calendar. I added some details in this title and symbol with my white gel pen, and outlined the text in the quote and gave it a bit of a drop shadow with my fine liners. On the next page, I traced all the boxes I had laid out for my habit tracker and then colored in the water on the far left edge. But this time I used a different technique. On the cover page, I was going over the same spots with the 2 markers again and again to blend the colors together, which the paper held up relatively well to, but it did start to wear down after a while. Plus, my lighter blue marker was starting to dry up. So this time around, I used a technique where I touched the 2 markers together for a second so that the ink flows between, and for a moment I can color with the lighter marker and it creates a gradient from the darker ink back to its own lighter colored ink. So I used that to blend the edges between the 2 shades of blue. I then filled in the boxes with black and added plain black drop shadows to the rest of the boxes. To make the title, I simply wrote habit and mood in my own cursive writing with my fine liner, and then used the same technique from the quote page to make the word tracker. I layered the 2 blues on top of each other and outlined it all with a fine liner and added the drop shadow. I then colored in the 2 fish swimming in opposite directions, the symbol for Pisces, which represents the dual nature of the sign. Lastly, I wrote in the titles, numbers, days, and counters, and used a gray Tombow marker to mark the weekends in the tracker boxes. The next spread is the Faves and Memories page, which is very straightforward. I made the title in the same way I made the fonts on the other pages, and also made the little boxes using the same technique. Just adding a dash of the pink marker beneath the second line of the title for a little extra something. Lastly, I set up my first weekly spread. I stuck with the same vertical layout I usually use, with the weekend stacked on the right-hand side, and I treated the boxes the same as the fonts on the other pages. And then I used the pink shade of Tombow marker to write the dates in behind the boxes. Then I went back to my monthly spread, and referencing my future log, I migrated all of my important dates and birthdays to the vertical calendar. Then I flipped to my weekly spread and filled in all the things I normally do in a week, like my gym days and when the recycling goes out. Before the final flip through, I want to thank my lovely Patreon team for supporting me. It's your help that keeps this channel going, and I really appreciate it. As we flip through the finished pages, don't forget that I always create free printable versions of my setups for my patrons to print and use in their own journals. And this time, I made a desktop and phone background of the quote page as well. So be sure to check out my Patreon to get your hands on those. The link will be in the description below. I hope I've done my Pisces sunshines proud with this setup. Let me know in the comments if you're a Pisces so I can wish you a happy birthday. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.